بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and I send prayers and peace upon the one who is sent. Please be patient with the children. We, the Al Azamis and our extended families, have lots of nephews and nieces, and they will be running around, and this is part of the new school. Inshallah, the Muslim Ummah manifested in ways that I hope will not be too distracting for us. Let me introduce myself very briefly. We have a very rich tapestry of speakers to come. My name is Usama Al Azami. I'm the third brother, my brother Nabeel Al Azami, whom we are here to celebrate today, inshallah, and pray for. Was the eldest not only of our own brothers and sisters, but of the entire generation on my father's side. And so I will be chairing today's event, inshallah, along with my sister Nabeel Al Azami, and there will be some cameos from the two eldest children of my brother, Sulaiman and Safiya. Let's begin, inshallah, with the recitation of the Quran, as is customary, so that we have the barakah of the divine word, inshallah, enlightening this gathering from my brother's nephew, my sister-in-law's nephew, Salih Amin. فليتفضل مشكورا.
الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب والذين كفروا أعمالهم كسراب بقيعة يحسبه الظمآن ماء حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه والله سريع الحساب. صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم. جزاكم الله خيرا. Salih. Next, I would like to ask Nusayba Al Azami, and we already have our first cameo from my brother's youngest son, inshallah. Nusayba, please.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The example of his light is like it's like a niche within which a lamp. The lamp is within glass, the glass as if it were a pearly white star lit from the oil of a blessed olive tree. Neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would almost glow even if untouched by fire, light upon light. Allah guides to his light whom he wills, and Allah presents examples for the people, and Allah is knowing of all things. Such niches are in mosques, which Allah has ordered to be raised, and that his name be mentioned therein, exalting him within them in the morning and the evenings. Are men whom neither commerce nor sale distracts from the remembrance of Allah, and performance of prayer and giving of zakah. They fear a day in which the hearts and the eyes will fearfully turn about, that Allah may reward them according to the best of what they did, and increase them from his bounty. And Allah gives provision to whom he wills without count. But those who disbelieved, their deeds are like a mirage in a lowland, which a thirsty one thinks is water, until when he comes to it, he finds it is nothing but finds Allah before him, and he will pay him in full his due, and Allah is swift in account.
Jazakumullah khairan. I should have mentioned Nabeel Al Azami is my youngest sister, the youngest member of the siblings of Nabeel Al Azami. And this is Samir Al Azami. Next, I would like to invite Brother Hamid Hussain Azad, who is the sort of chairman of the committee that organized this event, and also the CEO of Al Muntada Aid. تفضل جزاكم الله خير.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, all praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, the most merciful, who enabled us to organize this event of reflection and learning from the short but hugely impactful life of our dearest brother Nabeel Al Azami. This time last year, I was planning to travel with Nabeel to Switzerland to attend a high-level conference where our sister Nasha was there as well. This year I am planning to attend the same event in Canada, but without Nabeel. I'll be flying tomorrow with a heavy heart, missing my most trusted friend and my most resourceful younger brother. In age, Nabeel was 18 years younger, but in life, he was 20 years beyond his tender lunar age of 40. He was my teacher, he was my mentor, and I had the honor to facilitate the marriage between Nabeel and Nasrin. We witnessed how Nabeel was not an ordinary boy, rather an extraordinary leader. And it is only after his death that we can fully appreciate that he was not only an outstanding leader, but an amazing institution. In and of himself, a role model for hundreds of youngsters, a guide for professionals, and a vision for the Ummah. His reach was beyond recognition, and the impact of his personality transcended the geographical boundaries of states and nations. The flood of tributes and messages received after his departure are a testament to this. Most importantly, after being diagnosed with cancer, in the otherwise expected place of sadness and despair, he exhibited contentment. He yearned to meet his Lord and strived to do so in a state of happiness with a wealth of good deeds. He used his illness as a motivation to attain his Lord's mercy, and strove to accomplish what transpired to be his final effort, a legacy that imbued his love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. his death that he authored the book, many of us here today are in possession of Prophet Muhammad, 11 leadership qualities that changed the world. And many thanks to Caritas books, they have decided to sell this book in a very discounted price. Whoever has noticed it, you can buy it today at discounted price. Despite crippling pain, he left this world peacefully with a smile, which we pray is a sign of Allah's acceptance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him and Jamal with those that are serving. After his death, we received many requests to keep his legacy alive, to keep our memory of him lucid and clear, and to ensure his teaching continued to be conveyed, ultimately strive for his vision to be realized. This even is our first step towards that aim. My dear brothers and sisters, this is not an ordinary memorial event. It is an extraordinary event to capture the thoughts of an outstanding leader, to gather the lessons of passionate mentor, to collect the gems of a magnetic personality, a dear son, a loving father, a winning husband, and a caring brother, and to pave the way to achieving his great vision. Today, we hear from his family members, his students, his mentees, and his friends, and we will also launch a book of reviews which will capture various aspects of his life. This is the tribute book. Many suggested to sell this book. Alhamdulillah, his family and friends decided to give this book free to all of you, especially to each family. You can take one inshallah. However, whoever wants to contribute toward the cost of this book, that will be welcome, but no pressure, no price. We will also be launching a foundation to continue Nabeel's mission of building an effective and dynamic ummah. I hope Mary Johnson will address about this in his speech, inshallah. Many thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to bless us with your presence. I hope you will find the event motivating and enlightening. Thanks to all who work day and night to bring this event to fruition. We request your active participation throughout this event. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts and make this event a fountain of rewards. Allahumma ameen. Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair.
For the Hamid Hussein Azad, who is of course my brother's brother-in-law. And next we have my father, Nabeel Al Azami, to speak briefly about. Before my father comes, he's going to be introduced by his grandson, his eldest grandson, inshallah.
Nabeel Al Azami is a retired community development specialist. He's my uncle's father and paternal grandfather.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. My brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Just 3 points. First is that he's my firstborn, and I call him star child because as a child he never gave me or my late wife any problem as common with other children. So he was very special in that way. When Nazir was born 14 months later, he befriended him and allowed him to play with him and hurt him without hurting back. He never hit his brothers or sisters. He was exceptional. So that's about childhood and always trying to help me. And I would say that he was a protector of me. So I came to know 3 weeks later that he had cancer and that he was terminally ill and that there was no treatment. That was because he organized soft landing for me to know about it. So this shows that the protection I had while he was alive and I was in Jeddah, and the protection is no more. But maybe Allah will directly protect me now. That's number one. Number two is that I saw him a different man. When he became sick, he said, I had 3 options. One is to die, the other is to live with disability, and the third is to recover completely. And he said, whatever Allah's choice is, I agree.
He said he had no objection, he had no hesitation in accepting Allah's decision. And as indeed I would say, my heart bleeds, but my faith says Allah is always right. And to take him and to take his mother 15 years ago, and to take my parents without the ability of me to be present, all of them are right decisions for Allah. So that's my second point, that I accept that he became a spiritually empowered, enriched, energized man, that before he was ill, he was ordinarily spiritual. But when he was sick, he became extraordinarily enriched and energized and empowered spiritual man. So much so that he was smiling when I was crying. That's the second point. The third point is, this kind of event is good for us in terms of praising somebody who is gone. But what is important for me to remember and for me to share is that what's in it for me? For me is to remember that I'm going to die and that I'm going to have to do something good, that I'm going to have to learn to accept that I'm going to die and go to Allah, and what am I preparing for it? So unless I focus on me and my development from any lessons that I learn, it's pointless talking about somebody so good that he gets everything and I get nothing. So I conclude by saying that let's all reflect on our own reality of life, that we are going to die, and what have we got for us. Every day, 24 hours, we don't even spend 15 minutes. I say 10 minutes for tafsir, 3 verses every day, to show to me that it matters to me. And 5 minutes for hadith to show to me that Allah and Rasul are important in my life. And then build that, to build my own life for the death. Otherwise, I am a loser, I am a poor man. May Allah help us all to reflect on that and to build our lives that for the inevitable death. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah khairan, Abu, for an important and touching reminder of the legacy of my brother and what it means for us, those of us who remain. We're now going to have a short video message from my brother.
What makes somebody a good leader, a great leader? What makes somebody an authentic leader? And what do we mean by authentic leadership? How do you know when somebody is being a true, sincere and courageous leader, or somebody is being an insincere and cowardly leader?
Abraham Lincoln, he said that nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you really want to test a man's character, give him power. So something happens to people when power is involved. I was speaking to a number of leaders in the UK, and they were saying that men are capable of behaving very badly when power is involved. Now, what about this region here? Relatively speaking, which of your countries here is doing relatively okay? You want to shout out? Okay, Turkey, we're in Turkey. You might be surprised when I put up the stats. Okay, any other countries in this region? Qatar? Yep, Qatar is number 1. UAE is also there. Then you've got Jordan a little bit lower there. And my friend, I'm afraid Turkey seems to have some challenges there. But these are the better nations. All the other countries are below these. So this is part of our challenge to look at. A survey by leadership researchers Kuz and Posner, which asked 2,615 successful, mainly business leaders, what is the quality that makes you successful? What is it? And they didn't come up with business acumen or ability to predict future market trends. This is the list. Honesty and trustworthiness. This is the list. Now, this was done maybe a decade or two ago. But 1400 years ago, you find that of all the titles that God could have made Prophet Muhammad famous for, what do we know him as? As-Sadiq al-Amin. What does that mean? Someone who's honest and trustworthy. So we know that in our history, as Brother Fahad and others was talking about, we need to go back to our knowledge and our history and see the qualities that matter and embody those in our lives. That's where we're perhaps going wrong.
Saying that spiritual intelligence is your ability to direct yourself and inspire others, that's the leadership bit, towards a purpose. Ideally a shared purpose, but it doesn't have to be. If you're coaching someone else, it's their purpose. If you're in a common organization, it's a shared purpose. So it's the ability for you to dig deep and find out what are your values and how can you leverage those values to create meaningfulness in your life and in other people's lives. That's the leadership bit. And make a difference, right? What it is, this book, in the last 10 years of i'tikaf, each i'tikaf, the first day I picked up from the last day of last year's i'tikaf. Because outside, there's just no time. But in i'tikaf, you're afforded the time and space and peace to write. So this book saw Laylatul Qadr, in the last 4 years that I worked between 2014 and 18. This is a lifelong piece of work that I have been working on for more than 20 years. Through my childhood, I've been exposed to many leaders. And in 1999, when I joined Manchester Business School, parts of the University of Manchester, I heard the head of the business school claim that certain leadership ideas were invented by this American 50 years ago or this European 60 years ago. My own training from my parents and grandparents showed me that 1400 years ago these teachings were found in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So slowly my work, my research, my postgraduate work, my chartered qualification focused a lot on demonstrating that leadership qualities, human characteristics can indeed be found in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is what this book captures. This book captures an array of seerah-based evidence of these qualities. So I picked 11 leadership qualities which are really centered on the prophetic quality of al-qawi wal-amin, which is about being effective and ethical. But the 11 elaborate on these. And then we look at seerah evidence, then we look at contemporary application of these seerah evidence, and we look at case studies of organizations that have benefited from these prophetic leadership qualities. So then you have tips of how you can develop that particular quality. Do I look okay? I tried my best. Do I look all right? Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. The biggest privilege of my life that Allah looked after me, a very ordinary person with an extraordinary woman who I've never seen anyone like that on the planet. I'm sorry guys, I've just not seen anyone on the planet everywhere I go. And and my father, my family, they can't stop praising Nasreen. And then a joke started, okay, what else should we add on the Nasreen Appreciation website.com? So that's the kind of person she is, unbelievable, friends around her. And that's why, I've seen it in the last kind of 1 month in the hospital. Everyone's gathered around her, not just family, friends, people are just kind of supporting her. And that reflects the kind of incredible person she is. Beyond the character, she's super talented. She's in the best psychiatric hospital in the world, certainly in the country. She's so sharp, she's so bright. She transformed my thinking, she opened my mind, even on Murabi stuff. You think I've got the ideas, she's the one giving it to me, man. And then I'm just relaying it back to you, right? Do you know what I mean? So who I am, I owe a lot to my parents, but, I say that she's a psychiatrist and I'm her main patient, but, she's really kind of, I'm going to stop there. I think, I've said enough. You're okay, yeah? So, subhanAllah, I'm very, very lucky. This is not a funeral, guys. This is a wedding. So I want you guys you're all praying for me. I'm waiting to come back and recontribute with all of you that I'm doing.
and hopefully, that's there. God's just given me a test to improve me because I have weaknesses, to strengthen my character, and I've had an enrichment. I'm in a happy place. So don't cry and make me cry. I'm not planning to cry. We're going to have a happy speech, and I know a few tears might come up, but let's enjoy the moment. Let's, cherish the moment together, and we'll have more moments afterwards as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. Let's be happy and enjoy this moment, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I seem to have lost sound. Can I have sound back? Hello? Okay. Bismillah. Forgive me, let me switch the lights on very quickly. Alhamdulillah. I think we saw something of my brother's spirit in that message, mashallah. And it really did represent the way in which he held himself for the last 6 months of his life, with extraordinary patience, with contentment before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's a lesson for us all, that no matter what tribulation we are sort of dealt, that ultimately we can take a lesson from it, that it helps us grow, it helps us improve, and it helps us draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm now going to read out a message from Andy Pellant, who really wanted to be here. He was the chairman of my brother's company, Murabbi. Unfortunately, his mother is very unwell, so please keep her in your prayers as well. But I just wanted to read out this message very briefly. Andy Pellant was one of the he's the recently appointed chairman and acting CEO of Murabbi. He's an international leadership specialist and has a personal and organizational history of success as a consultant, coach, change specialist, author, and speaker. He was formerly a professional mentor and a coach to my brother during his time at Ford Motor Company. So their relationship goes back, I think, well over 15 years. So his message is to say, I miss my friend, and I am grateful for the time that we had together. There was nothing more special than the intimacy of being with him through his illness and his graceful acceptance of his faith and his destiny. I am clear that Nabeel came to us as a gift, and that we all have been given a small spark of his powerful light, and that it is our choice how we honor that gift. For some, it will be a simple memory of who he was and the passion which guided his life. We honor him by talking about him, not just amongst ourselves, but to those who never met him, but who got to know him via our stories and our behaviors and our language. For some, it will be a stronger drive to take his purpose to a wider audience, to our families, to our friends, to our community, and to our work. I miss my friend, and I will seek to honor his gift. The next person to speak is the person actually responsible for one of the main sort of drivers behind getting the books that you see, one in memory of my brother and one of my brother's own authorship, published at such short notice. I'd like to invite Sheikh Sharif Hassan al-Banna, who is the chairman of Claritas Books and the CEO of Awakening. He's a scholar, an author, an entrepreneur, and an advisor to many. Sheikh Hassan has been a long-term spiritual guide for my brother and a very close friend of his. He took on the impossible task of receiving my brother's manuscript roughly 8 weeks ago. He worked tirelessly to edit and see this book through publication. During my brother's illness, he took it upon himself through what is likely many sleepless nights to make sure that we see the publication that we have before us today. And we owe him a great deal of thanks to make it possible. Bismillah. Tafadhal.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على آخر الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, reminded us that souls are like a battalion of soldiers, always ready for the next step of the journey. Innal arwaha junudun mujannada. Friendship is in essence a union of souls. Nabeel's departure made me reflect over the nature of friendship and how fragile it has become these days. The Quran describes the ideal bond between believers as bunyanun marsus, as a solid, cemented structure. Each brick is needed to build the full structure. When a brick is missing, it leaves a permanent void which is visible and felt. The bond is further strengthened by being ruhama'u baynahum, full of compassion with one another. Aristotle categorized friendship into three: for benefit, for pleasure, and a relationship based on mutual appreciation of the virtues the other person holds dear. It is a friendship of virtues. We are and we live through the people we spend time with. The bonds we forge with those close to us directly shape our experience, our quality of lives. Life is too short for shallow friendships. Al-Ghazali defined a brother as someone who you would not question should he place his hands in your pocket and take whatever he wanted. Such is the noble yet elusive maqam or status of friendship. We should think twice before we attribute our relationships to this noble status. My relationship with Nabeel was one which was driven by mutual love, trust, and comfort. He could depend on me and I could depend on him. He decided to make me part of every major decision in his life. I was at ease, sharing my inner thoughts with him as he would be with his. There were no boundaries except that of mutual adab. And I'm sure when Nabeel used to tell Nasreen that he was popping over to see me for an hour or two, like my wife, he knew exactly what that meant. The duration was an aspiration which never ever materialized. We had a lot to discuss every time, and we possibly couldn't be constrained by time. I tried my best to be there for him whenever he needed me. Yes, I regret that I couldn't spend more time with him over the last few years. Although I will cherish the 6 to 7 weeks where I worked with him nearly every day to complete his book, his dream. I was locked in a room in Istanbul. He was bedridden at a hospital in London. And upon reflection, I've realized that my last 4 visits to London from Istanbul, where I currently reside, was primarily due to Nabeel. I came in April to visit him at hospital. I came back in June to help launch his book. I returned in August to bid him farewell at his funeral, and I'm here today at his memorial. But honestly, it feels all surreal. In an age where bonds of friendship and intimacy have been adulterated through the excesses of individualism and self-interest and public projection of one's life on social media platforms in the digital forest we all inhabit, we need to help each other to regain our sense of balance, or what the Quran calls al-mizan, the spiritual equilibrium, where the deeper reaches of our souls inspires our thoughts and behavior, and aspires for greatness through loving God and serving His creation. All of us need each other, especially close friends, to help us on that journey. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and exhort one another to truth and to patience. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. Choose your close friends carefully, our Prophet ﷺ said. Share with them your struggles, your burdens, your hopes. Allow them to hold you by their hands, hug you, lend you a shoulder to cry on or sometimes to stand on. For me, I chose my beloved brother Nabeel as such a friend and a companion, or rather, Allah placed us both on each other's paths. The reunion of the souls which first met in the world of souls. I've always contemplated why Allah decides to take good people earlier than we would have thought. And if I'm to be totally honest with myself, I'm still left searching. Yes, I can quote scripture, sayings of the righteous, and comfort myself. And as a believer, I put all my trust in Allah, and I'm asked to be content with His decree. And I reason with myself that He alone knows best. And I have no doubt that He does. In His infinite wisdom and divine mercy, He, the Almighty, decides, kun fayakun, be, and it is. But why? Perhaps it's a story of transcendental symbiotic love beyond the grasp of reason. Reason is powerless in the expression of love, according to the great spiritual master Rumi. The great Muslim theologian Ibn al-Qayyim writes that the more that love becomes firmly embedded in our hearts, the easier it is for the lover to endure harm and adversity in pursuit of pleasing his beloved. The poet says, were you to choose to afflict me with adversity, truly delighted would I be that I crossed your mind. It was a delight, a pleasure, and an honor to have known Nabeel, to have lived with Nabeel, and to have experienced him. True to his name, he exuded nobility whilst he was with us all, and with the greatest of care, attention, and compassion, he treated us all. I will deeply miss him. Please remember him in your prayers. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh Hassan, for these really touching reminder of the importance of love in all of our lives, but the importance of a higher kind of love that can transcend the worldly, inshallah. Next, I would like to invite Sarah Joseph, who is Sarah Joseph OBE, was the CEO and editor of the Muslim lifestyle magazine ML, and a prominent commentator on British Muslims. In 2010, she was listed as one of the world's 500 most influential Muslims, and she's a very close friend of my brother's. Please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of God, the most merciful, the most kind. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise is due to Allah, Lord of all the worlds. Assalamu alaikum. Two immutable truths. We are all born and we will all die. What matters ultimately is what we do with the time in between. Now, Nabeel, born in 1980, made the journey back to his Lord on August 14th this year. Just 39 years on this earth. It feels like no age at all, if I'm honest. Yet these were such impactful years. These years between birth and death, our lives on earth, our every moment lived. What do we want them to stand for? For Nabeel, they were years of great vision and professional excellence. They were years of selfless kindness. They were years of choices well made in the pursuit of goodness. They were a life well lived. He got to the end fast, but with such consciousness of God. The end? Well, it is an end of sorts. An end to his time in this reality. But it is also a beginning in the reality of the journey home. And Nabeel makes that journey after a life which recognized profound truths. Indeed, he searched those truths out. He was active in his pursuit of knowledge, both of the mind and of the spirit. But whilst I am sure that every one of us in this room is grateful for Nabeel's life and fully hopeful of God's limitless mercy, it is also important to recognize and acknowledge the loss to the world. The loss, firstly, to his family. Before he journeyed on, I know that Nabeel reflected on his concerns for his beloved family. For his father, who knows the pain of a loss which goes against the norms of time. For his wife, Nasreen, whom Nabeel spoke of so touchingly in that video, and who now must be both parents without the support of her Nabeel. For his children, Suleiman, Safiya and Samir, who will grow up with stories of how outstanding their father was, but who cannot build new memories of him and feel his warm embrace. And of course for his siblings, for whom Nabeel, as the eldest, meant so very much, a leader from the beginning. And then there is the loss to the community. God knows we need the vision, the excellence, the intelligence, the sincerity and leadership that Nabeel exhibited. The world feels like it is descending into ever more chaotic pathways. Nabeel's focus and wisdom, especially in highlighting the character and leadership qualities of the Prophet ﷺ for our benefit, will be profoundly missed. And so it's important to acknowledge that we experience the grief of this loss. Of course, there is faith that he is in a far better place. Of course, we know that this is the nature of the world. Of course, we accept that this is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we are human, and grief can bring all sorts of emotions. Numbness, confusion, anger, guilt. I, for one, question God, why take Nabeel so early? Why? And whilst it doesn't fully make sense to me, is there ever a time we would have considered good? Ultimately, we accept the merciful knows that which we know not. Grief ultimately is dealing with loss. Loss of health, loss of youth, loss of status, loss of love, loss of a home, loss of a homeland, loss of wealth, loss of dreams and aspirations, loss of what might have been loss. And the ultimate grief, loss of a loved one. But we must know, nothing is lost with God. Everything remains with the merciful. As the Quran reminds, even an atom's weight of our actions remain with him. Nabeel was called to his Lord at God's appointed moment. But as many of us witnessed in this very building just a few short months ago, he was content. He exemplified God's reminder, "O thou soul at peace, return to your Lord, well pleased and pleasing to him. Enter with my true servants, enter my paradise." Nabeel has left an exceptional legacy in his short time on this earth. May the merciful enable us to live not in the shadow of his loss, but in the light of that legacy. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sarah Joseph. That was extremely touching, and I wanted to say that there was constant recitation of the Quran after my brother's illness in his presence. And he died around the Fajr time, but in the evening and the day before, some of us read from Surah Al-Fajr, the verse that you recited, and we translated it. And we hope that that's the spirit in which he's been accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, O contented soul, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Return to your Lord, pleasing and well pleased. Next, I'd like to invite my brother and my youngest uncle, Dr. Salman Al Azami, who is a senior lecturer at Liverpool Hope University in linguistics. Jazakumullah khair.
Difficult to follow that speech. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On behalf of the family, I thank you all for the love you have shown for our dearest Nabeel since his passing away, and for coming here today to show how much you have loved him. Verily, all our love to fellow human beings are a blessing from Allah. Ever since I first saw him in December 1981, when he came to Bangladesh as an 18-month-old toddler, a special bond developed between us. It was less uncle-nephew and more friend and companion. It was more about supporting in family and personal affairs. Not very much from me to him, but mostly from him to me. Through many close encounters with him since his childhood, I found consistency of his characteristics that made Nabeel that we all came to know. It was clearly evident from his childhood that he inherited a lot of leadership qualities from his illustrious grandfather. The true demonstration of ethical leadership begins at home, how an individual treats people who know them closely, particularly his or her family. Like my father, Nabeel was a role model for his extended generation of siblings and cousins, so much so that even we, the older generation, looked up to him and were inspired by his leadership qualities. Following the Quranic principle, لِمَا تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ, that we practice what we preach, Nabeel taught ethical leadership around the world. And within his family and professional life, he was an embodiment of ethical leadership. From looking after his siblings, to being the right-hand man to his father, to establishing an ethical leadership organization. In his life, Nabeel tried to practice the leadership qualities of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The 11 qualities he mentions in his seminal book, he tried to practice each one of them, and the people gathered here will testify this. However, what he demonstrated during his 7-month illness is the greatest lesson for all of us to learn. How to deal with the biggest test a human being can face. His spiritual elevation during the period that he himself called ibtila, tribulations. He taught us the true meaning of patience, gratefulness, and care for all. Brothers and sisters, I know we are all filled with emotions, and tears are rolling down our cheeks while remembering such a towering figure who achieved so much in such a short period of time and left us so soon. Although this is natural, but I just want to remind us all that today we are gathered here to celebrate the life of our dearest Nabeel. Let us all remember him for what he has done for us, rather than only mourn his passing away. Most importantly, let us carry on his legacy, particularly by promoting his book and practicing the qualities he reminded us to achieve in his book. This is the only way we can express our love for him and enable him to get the sadaqah jariyah, or continuing reward, that will help in his salvation in the hereafter. Finally, before I go, I want to request you to read the tributes in the book that I was honored to be its co-editor. In such a limited time, it was the second miracle in a few months that a book of such quality could be produced after his leadership book. I hope this book will help us remember Nabeel and make us pray for him, and also hope that it will have a permanent shelf life in our personal libraries. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah khairan, Chachu. The next sort of speaker is Tanim Zaman, who is my brother's student and right-hand man. So Tanim is the head of operations and client management at Murabbi. He has been Nabeel's right-hand man since 2015, when he left his role as head of HR at Islamic Relief Worldwide to take Murabbi's mission of promoting global, ethical and effective leadership worldwide. فليتفضل.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I consider myself truly fortunate and blessed to have had the opportunity to know Ustad Nabeel, to learn from him and to work with him very closely. As we worked, traveled and dreamt together, I was able to observe him very closely and uncover many beautiful attributes and prophetic qualities. With most heroes, the more time you spend with them, the more faults, bad habits, and shortcomings you start to notice. But with Ustad Nabeel was the only person that I have met so far that the more time I spent with him, the more my respect for him increased. So I'd like to share with you a few things that I've learned in my time with him, working, traveling, discussing, dreaming. So from him I've learned to always give people the benefit of the doubt. Whether they may be doing something wrong or making a mistake, he showed the same level of patience and mercy to someone who unintentionally barged into him as someone who may have ruined his flight bookings or damaged his office. From him, I have learned to speak gently with family and relatives. He talked with love and respect with the elders and with love and patience with the youngers. From him, I have learned to be visionary and think big. He was always full of ideas, and most of them you would class as ambitious and overly optimistic. But that is what probably helped him achieve so much in so little time. From him I have learned that every hour counts. His days was meticulously planned, and he had alarms set to ensure that every activity did not overrun. From him I have learned to honor people and make them feel special. This is a prophetic quality. From him I've learned to articulate our Islamic values in a way which is universal and appealing to all. He always made sure to express and showcase Islamic values in a way which is appealing for the mainstream, and he always worked to develop wider relationships and alliances. From him I have learned the importance and the tremendous reward of developing people. His work was all about his work. You can read it from the tribute book, inshallah. I just want to share a dream that I had.
I can read it if you like. Tanim is an extended member of my family. He's one of my younger brothers. And very often you have a situation where those close to those who've passed, there's a long tradition of ru'ah, of seeing dreams of the deceased in the Islamic tradition. And he's one of two people I know who are close enough to my brother that he had a dream seeing my brother. And I'm going to read this dream out very. It's a beautiful sort of memory. I met Ustad Nabeel beside his resting place in Gardens of Peace, where he's buried. I was overwhelmed with light, and he embraced me with a warm hug. He then took me by the hand and showed me around his garden, which had green grass and streams of water. I felt the warmth of his hand, just like when he would hold my hand in the hospital. I asked him how he was, and he replied, he is well, and that he does not miss the dunya. I apologized for not visiting him yet, since the burial. And as always, this is a while ago, so he has visited since then. And as always, he reassured me and stopped me feeling sorry. He smiled at me and said, this is the best type of visit. I noticed the blessed name of the Prophet ﷺ imprinted in nur, in light on his forehead. He has been honored with the prophetic mark. I asked him, what is your message for your family? He said, tell them, perfect their character. He said, tell them, perfect their character, and we will meet in Jannah. I asked him, what is his advice for me? He said, be good to your mother, and make her your greatest priority. I asked him for advice regarding my son. He said, teach him good manners. I asked him what he thought of the many tributes in his memory. He said, I am not deserving, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always honors those who serve others. I started to ask his permission to take leave. He hugged me, and the dream came to an end. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan to the name. I can understand that it's a difficult thing to read. Next we have some video messages from several people. I believe several people who were unable to come because of being away. Some of these are international. So inshallah, we will have this and we'll continue after.
We talked about intellectual, we talked about experiential learning, and most people from a secular discourse would just stop there. I would add the spiritual dimension. We talked a little bit about spirituality before, but by investing time to build our relationship with Allah, purifying our hearts, spending time with Quran, Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud, and doing exercises which cleanse ourselves from vice and poor qualities and strengthening the virtues, Allah will see our sincerity in engaging with ibadat and trying to build proximity, and He will open doors. He will make our intellectual investment count for more than we ever could hope for. He will make our experience count for. A lot of people have experience and still haven't really grown because they've not really used that experience to really reflect and transform their capabilities. So you need intellectual, experiential, and spiritual dimensions of development. Then you will see yourself change. And that, and perhaps this quote sums it up, where Ali Radhan said, "The shortest distance between a problem and a solution is the distance between your knees and the floor. Whoever kneels to Allah can stand up to anything."
You're sitting on a treasure chest as Muslims, sitting on a treasure chest, and you're not leveraging it. And you're not leveraging the power of your faith to give yourself a greater sense of meaning and purpose in your life. And when you do that and integrate it in that way, you can transform your communities and the world.
But my legs, I can't move at all. And this is a wonderful, humbling gift from Allah, because for 38 years I had strong legs, confident in my feet, traveling around the world. And how many times did I thank Allah for this blessing? Now I thank Allah every day. He's humbled me. I can't even move my feet. I need to be hoisted out of bed. And this is a wonderful tarbiyah for me that I am cherishing. But Allah has also gifted me that my arms are not affected above here. So that ability to hug my children, so I'm making the most of that. Allah knows if this is going to get affected. Doctors don't know. So I'm trying to maximize the ability to hug my children and my family. the incredible amount I've learned from this ibtila, this tribulation, and how this has been one of my life's biggest blessings. I am going to be 39 in June. 38 and a half, I feel I've relearned, because I've never been in a hospital situation. Allah's kept me healthy, alhamdulillah, but I needed this training experience because I feel I've relearned 38 years of my life and my tarbiyah from childhood and to professionalism in the last 4 or 5 weeks in the hospital alone. And with greater understanding and depth, and Allah gifted that to me. I will share other hadith on these matters next time. I have to preserve my health. But this is, I feel as though none of you will ever really reach a certain depth of understanding if you don't experience some ibtila. And hence, we say in leadership, Danny knows that leadership is like a tea bag. You don't know how good it is until it's in hot water. So a crisis reveals the true character in a person, but a crisis can turn you away, but a crisis can also elevate you. So your attitude towards a crisis is the critical approach. And if you prepare yourself, then you can face any tribulation and raise yourself and raise those around you. And I have had very little preparation, but the reason why I am content in this situation is I asked Allah that I am a weak believer, so I haven't prepared. Can you help me? And Allah gifted me some kind of ability. And I feel in one of the highest spiritual conditions, because as one of my sheikhs said, when you have a physical illness, be grateful you do not have a spiritual illness. I do have a serious physical illness, but I am in the highest spiritual place I have ever experienced in my life, even more than Hajj.
So rather than constantly talking about the problems, as an ethical leader, sometimes you can do that. You still define hope for the future and give people the soundtrack that builds the future. So just to conclude, my dear wise owl ethical leaders, my message to you is to fly through the chaos of today to build a new era for tomorrow. The future is waiting for you. Thank you very much.
The next speaker will be Badrul Hassan Salman. He is founder of Arabic Institute. He is my uncle's youngest brother-in-law and my maternal uncle.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Since we were little, Nabeel was my big little brother. It's quite hard to look up to your little brother. But I had several reasons to look up to him, not least because he was significantly taller than me. And at one point, he lived in the flat above me, so I often climbed the stairs and looked up towards him. But those things are trivial. What I want to focus on today is why I really looked up to him, despite it being so hard, owing to human defects and ego, to look up to one's little brother. Now, as I was young, since I was young, I used to think perhaps my little sister will never marry, because I couldn't think of any man good enough to be her husband. But Nabeel debunked that theory in my mind. Not only did he deserve my sister, she also deserved him. Now, going back to why I looked up to Nabeel, there are very few people who have not only lived in such close quarters outside of his immediate family than I have, but also who've had a significant financial transaction with him. As Muslims, we know that we don't really know a person truly until we've lived and traveled with them
and or had a financial transaction with them. And I've had both. So I'd like to explain why I believe I need to look up to him, and I did look up to him, and why he deserved, and my sister deserved him. Nabeel's name is Nabeel. In Arabic, the word Nabeel means noble. And often we find that Allah gives us the characteristics that match our names. Now, having lived with Nabeel and I decided, I lived in that flat for about 3 years, we decided that we didn't need 2 separate cars, so we'd buy a car together. So one day, we went out together to buy a car, which we would share for the next 3 years. And we got to the dealership, and we chose a car that we both liked, and we started to haggle and negotiate. And I like to strike a good bargain. It's just the way I am, I guess. And also part of my training is about trying to negotiate things down, get a better deal. So I had a very clear strategic plan of how to get the price that I wanted for this car. And halfway through, the dealer offered a price, and Nabeel, without warning, said yes. And I felt really disappointed, slightly upset with Nabeel, but you can't get too upset with Nabeel, such a nice guy. And I thought, well, that's it. So we bought the car at that price. Afterwards, I asked Nabeel, why did you say yes? I had this thing nailed. It was under control. And he said, Bhaiya, I just felt embarrassed to haggle anymore over money. And he melted my heart. I felt if my little brother, my big little brother, and that day I looked up to him, because that's nobility. It's the point where he felt, that price is good enough for me. I don't need to drag the other person down anymore. This can be a win-win situation. That's one of the characteristics of a leader. You don't try to make it a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. It's about, let me get a good bargain, and I want you to get a good bargain too. And at the point I feel that we're both happy with whatever we've arrived at, that's the point at which I'll stop haggling. That's pure nobility, pure and utter nobility. When he said that to me, I didn't say anything back. I learnt a lesson that day from Nabeel, which I share with you today, and which I'd like you to share with others. Because in that story, Nabeel is made eternal. Not Nabeel the person, but Nabeel, the embodiment of prophetic virtue, of prophetic leadership, which is, let's find a win-win situation for everybody. We find that lesson throughout the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another reason why I feel I need to look up to him and learn a lesson from him. And again, it's about the car. And I'm going to come back to why I chose the analogy of the car, or the true story of the car. And the second story was, as you know, when you share a car, the car throws up many opportunities for dispute and disagreement. Things can go wrong. You can fill the tank up and the next day find it empty. As Nabeel's smaller, older brother, out of force of culture and custom, I had to defer to him on occasions. Not necessarily because of my virtue, but because I had to. I was his older brother by several years. But listen to this. Now, Nabeel used to drive the car in the weekends. That was the informal arrangement. I'd have it in the week. He'd come back from Birmingham in the weekends, and he'd have the car in the weekends. One week, a friend of mine asked me if he could borrow the car in the weekend. And without thinking, absent-mindedly, without remembering that there's another owner of this car, I gave it to my friend. Now, it was either a Saturday or a Sunday morning. Nabeel called me up, slightly puzzled, because he'd been looking for the car for a while. Sometimes we, rather than disturb each other, we'd go out and look on the side streets in case we'd parked it around the corner. So having not found the car, he called me up and said, Salman Bhaiya, where's the car? And I bit my lip. And I said to him, Nabeel, I gave the car to my friend, and he's halfway up the M1 towards Birmingham. And he said, okay, Bhaiya. And he quickly began to replan his day with his family without the car. Not an inkling of disappointment or dismay in his voice. That is another prophetic characteristic. I'd like to share with you a story from the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which displays this hilm, we call this forbearance, the characteristic of forbearance and mercy. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a mercy to the universe, not just the human beings, but also to the animals and the trees and the earth and the planets and the stars and the galaxies. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had a young man in his service called Anas radiallahu anhu, who began serving him as quite a young man, in today's legal terms, while he was still a child. And one day the Prophet ﷺ sent him on an errand. So Anas went off, and in the streets he met some other children. And like children, he became distracted and began to play with the children. He forgot about his task. After a while, the Prophet ﷺ wondered, where is Anas? So he went out to the street and looked for him. Now many of us as adults, having given a task to a junior, might feel disappointed and perhaps slightly angry and irascible at that point. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ found Anas playing, and he called out to him, Anas, Anas, without an inkling of disappointment. So this is the characteristic of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and of leadership. That when a junior, a younger person, a person with less experience, makes a mistake, we don't berate them, we don't throw them out, we don't make their hearts sink, not even in the tone of our voice, but we accommodate them, we understand their situation, and we lift them up. I had a boss at work like that, who never said to me, why did you do that? He always used to say, Salman, next time do this. And I'd like to finish off by telling you why I think that for these characteristics and for many others, I believe Nabeel is in Jannah, he's in paradise. And that's another story from, a personal story from my life and the life of my family. On that day that Nabeel passed away, we woke up in the morning and my wife came to me and said, Nabeel has passed away. My little daughter, who is 4 years old, she said, so she hadn't heard this. So we started getting ready to go to the house. And she said, Amma, where are you going? And she said, we're going to Nabeel Fuba's house. And she said, oh, I saw him in my dream. He died. We were very surprised because she hadn't heard this, and she's a 4-year-old child. She said, I saw him in my dream, he died. And so afterwards, I called a scholar and asked him about that dream, the dream of a child. And he told me that sometimes the name of the person who sees the dream, when you interpret the dream, the name of the person who sees the dream is significant to the meaning of the dream. And my daughter's name is Jannah, which means garden of paradise. So that was a message, we believe, of divine providence, to tell us and give us hope and joy that day, that on the day that Nabeel passed away, he is in Jannah, inshaAllah. Wa jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khairan, Salman Bhai, for really the anecdotes that we hear are a reminder for all of us who are alive today of, in some respects, an aspiration, inshallah. I'd like to now invite, unfortunately time is a bit short, so I'm going to be very quick in my introductions, and I ask people to sort of keep their remarks to around 3 minutes, so that we end in good time for Salat al-Asr, inshallah. Next we have Junaid Ahmed, who's a very close friend of my brother's and of the family. The relationship goes back to the founding of Murabbi. He was the co-founder of Murabbi Consulting and is a senior management professional who's worked both in the public and voluntary sectors, and has worked closely with my brother over the past 10 years of Murabbi's life to develop this institution. فليتفضل مشكورا.
الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Nabeel was my companion of over 2 decades. I've had the honor and privilege to work with him closely, both professionally and on a community level. We've engaged in joint business ventures, co-founding Murabi Consulting, and we've traveled extensively. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for honoring me with such a gift in my life. I have many personal memories. My relationship with Nabeel begins in the late 90s when he returned from Jeddah and he became part of the Young Muslim Organisation UK, and we worked together in the executive committee. He would often travel from Manchester to London, and when he was in London during those days, he would stay over in my house. And I remember those memories where we would be discussing about the affairs of the Ummah, and at times we would also take break and sing nasheed, some Islamic songs. And Nabeel was able to speak Bengali in its proper form, which at that time I was very weak at, and I would often try and copy him. And I remember a time when we were singing, for those who would remember, Pritibite Eto Bashane, that nasheed. And I would struggle to say the word Pritibi. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly even now. And he would constantly correct me. And that became a joke, actually, even in later times. Whenever we would talk about Bengali, we would remember this line, Pritibi te eto bashane, and I would struggle, and he would try and correct me, as he often did. We performed Umrah together many times during our visits to Jeddah when we worked for IDB. We had the road trip to Jerusalem from Egypt, where Sheikh Hassan al-Banna and others were part of that trip. And we had many funny moments during our travels. One such moment was when we traveled to the Lamu Island, west of Kenya. And it was a very remote island, yet both of us were dressed in suits, suited and booted, landing in this very small airport and taking a boat to the remote island, and everyone looking at us while we dressed in this like city workers over there in Lamu Island. There are many memories, personal memories that I can share, but I want to share my brief reflection on some of the exemplary qualities I have observed in Nabeel consistently over the time that I've known him. And I want these qualities, these 5 qualities, to be a sadaqah jariyah for him, as I constantly get inspired by those qualities that I saw in him consistently. Firstly, compassionate character. Nabeel truly embodied the leadership qualities and values that he taught others. However, central to his character and personality, in my observation, was his compassion and genuine care for others. I've not seen many individuals as well-mannered and courteous in words and behavior as he was. And that wasn't only with dignitaries, but the taxi drivers, the receptionists at the hotel, the waiter, with everyone he engaged with, he showed this immense quality of courteousness and compassion. I believe it is through this honorable character of his that he managed to touch so many hearts and impact so many lives. The second quality is his passion to serve. He was consumed by the desire to help others, individually and the Ummah. Nabeel was completely selfless in his pursuit for a better world. He identified there was a serious crisis in leadership, in his view, the root cause for many of today's challenges. And this is where he knew he could contribute to make a real difference. Number 3, Nabeel was a visionary person, always thinking bigger. He wouldn't let you think big. You had to think bigger. He was a wise and insightful individual that was always thinking about the future. Not only did he have a vision for himself and Murabbi, but for the world at large. He wanted to see a world led by competent and ethical leaders in all spheres of life. I remember visiting him in hospital with some of his colleagues from the YMO days that he engaged with. And he took a moment with every single one of them to inspire them to do something bigger than what they're currently doing. That will be Nabeel, always inspiring people and everyone around him to think bigger. The fourth quality that I always saw in Nabeel was his industrious work ethics. Nabeel was a man on a mission. His belief and passion for what he wanted to achieve led him to work tirelessly. He had very little time for leisure. I would often urge him to take a break or slow down. On reflection, it seems he knew he had a tight deadline in this world. And the fifth quality is that of spirituality. He was a spiritually rooted person. Faith was central in his life. It was one of the core values that governed his decision-making process at all times. However, the depth and extent of his relationship with his Lord became undoubtedly evident during his illness. The complete surrender and contentment he had with the decree of Allah can only be from a man of deep faith and a strong relationship with his Creator. These are the qualities I witnessed in my close relationship with Nabeel, memories I will carry and lessons I will take from my companionship with Nabeel of over 20 years. I still feel a real sense of grief. The pain is both physical and emotional. However, we accept the decree of our Lord and we pray He grants Nabeel the highest place in Jannah. I miss Nabeel every single day.
I actually remember my brother talking about trying to teach you guys to read with the Abu Pashane. So it's quite an interesting story. So our next speaker will be Naz Shah MP. He is Member of Parliament for Bradford West and Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities. Naz participated in Murabbi Consulting's Executive Leadership Programme in 2018 and took up leadership coaching lessons with Nabeel and Independent. So she's a good friend and a sister.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm a bit lost for words after hearing all those tributes, and I was thinking about whether I should write a few words, but what can I write even as a politician that would do justice to my brother Nabeel? I knew Nabeel for less than a year, just a few days less than a year. We were in Switzerland and there was a session on for spiritual leadership, and I have a passion for leadership, the position that I'm in. And one of the things that in politics is really absent is leadership. And when he talked about spiritual leadership and his passion during that seminar, indeed I met Dr. Hisham through that seminar and many others, he really infused me to seek out more of what he understood. I went and met with him. He talked to me. He brought me back to my home, which was my passion of leadership, away from politics. He guided me, he mentored me, he introduced me to others. I went along to his residential. I had an amazing time to be able to be a Muslim amongst Muslims, and a Muslim who talked about what was pertinent to me as a Muslim woman, navigating through what is a very hostile political landscape for Muslims. Nabeel inspired me. Nabeel has left lots with me. You know, Allah works in mysterious ways. Allah puts people in places at the right time for us, people, to be the light that we need at that very time. And there is one thing that I am grateful for, is Allah has blessed me immensely with those people who I need in my life at that time. And Nabeel was one of those people. And I'm looking around and I look at the legacy that he's left and listen to every speaker, and no doubt those that will come after me talking about what he has left and what he has meant. His legacy is way beyond this room, way beyond his family who are so blessed, his children, his wife, his siblings, his parents. His legacy will influence me for the rest of my life. The spiritual leadership that he talked about, he took me back to what it is to be trying to aspire to the best of all leaders, our Prophet, peace be upon him. Nabeel engraved that and gave it back to me in a book, and he gave it back to the world in a book. He challenged the idea of leadership having come from 50 years ago. He challenged the idea of leadership about just what we see in politics today, but he actually challenged me to be the best version of me, and the best version of me as a Muslim. And that is something that nobody had given me before. I understand emotional intelligence, I understand situational leadership, it's a passion of mine. But to actually go back and give it to me from what my core is as a Muslim is something that is priceless. And that's a legacy that I will carry with me for the rest of my days, not just in my political life, but in my home life, in my family life, for my children, for my friends, how I behave, how I try and pass that message on. I'm a better person for having known Nabeel for just short of that year. Nabeel may have been in my life in a physical sense of less than a year, and days before I was blessed to have been at Arafat when the last time I made dua for Nabeel at such an emotional time was on the plains of Arafat whilst the rain was pouring down. And that will stay with me for the rest of my life. He was an amazing individual. It's really, really hard to understand what he's left me with. I am a better person for have known him, and I am in absolute awe of you, of his family, for how you have put this together, how everybody is coming up here and talking about him in the sense that he would be so proud of, that I am so proud of. I am absolutely in awe of the love, the affection that is here right now in this room. And that is just reflective of who he was. You know, if there's something that we could all aspire to, is to leave a legacy of which Nabeel has left amongst us today, and wider than today, that would be a life fulfilled for me. May Allah grant him the highest ranks of Jannah, and please do keep him in your du'as, as I will continue to do so. Jazakallah.
Thank you very much, Nasha. Our next speaker is Dr. Zaza Johnson-Loshir. She's a trained medical doctor and solicitor and the BAME leadership consultant at Morocco. She is a partner at BEMA, Belief in Mediation and Arbitration, and supported Nabeel during the early period of his illness.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon to all of you. Assalamu alaikum. It's a strange one. The title of my talk is Rejoicing in Ibtila. I first met Nabeel around 8 years ago. My impressions of him, my first impressions was mashallah, tabarakallah, very ambitious gentleman, very focused, whilst being deeply respectful of Sheikh Fahim and Sheikh Adil. There was something about him. I didn't see him for some while until I had the privilege of joining him on his course, the leadership course, where I also met one of the Nazshah in the alumni. The next step in our relationship of knowing one another was that in February of this year, he contacted me. I'd been given a little bit of information that he was unwell, but didn't know why. And when I spoke with him and he told me that he was paralyzed in one of his feet, so quite early on, I knew, because I'm a doctor, I knew the possibilities. And I congratulated him for having been chosen, one of the people to be chosen for ibtila, one of the people to be chosen by Rabbana subhanahu wa ta'ala to draw closer, to have that privilege. And he said, you're the first person not to be miserable and sad. And I said, brother, this is a wonderful news. 15 months before that, I myself had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was very sudden. And what Brother Nabeel and I were able to share in that time was secrets, I have to say, things that I couldn't even share with my own family. Why? Because it would distress them. For us to be talking about how joyous we were, to be the possibility of returning to Rabbana subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not because our lives weren't happy and full with ambition and love and wonderful relationships, but because going to Rabbana subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say, Inna lillahi inna ilayhi raji'un. But we often say it with a shudder, with a head hanging low, in sadness. But in the time that I was ill, I was in King's College Hospital for 2 months. I have to share with you what I shared with my brother Nabeel, was the deepest connection with Rabbana subhanahu wa ta'ala. A connection that I couldn't gain in Hajj. I was so delighted, and to be able to not tell my family that, because of course they were so sad that I was seriously ill, the prognosis was unknown. But in that time with Brother Nabeel, so in the evenings when his family had gone home, we'd get busy on the phone. WhatsApp is wonderful. So we were busy talking, celebrating, sharing the same stories. 2:30 in the morning would be the prime time to wake up in the morning. That's not the time we were speaking, of course. But I remembered that that was the prime time until Fajr. Every single day. And I'm somebody who made dua for so many years. Ya Allah, please make it easier for me to wake for Fajr. And I often failed. In that time, there was no alarm needed. I was suddenly awake, full of beans, ready to go, enjoying the relationship with Rabbana subhanahu wa ta'ala, the deep connection. So other than the stories that we shared, I also really admired Nabeel, because he's the only man that I've ever met in my whole life, and I'm 11 years older than him, who could multitask. I've never ever met a man before him or after him who could multitask to that level. He could be deeply focused on his career, and I had the privilege of becoming one of the senior trainers in Murabbi. So we'd talk about Murabbi. He'd be giving me instructions for his will, because that was my task, to prepare his will for him, and ordering chicken, and speaking to the staff at the same time, and perhaps even still texting and laying out his diary. So he was a deeply inspirational person. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that he is in Jannah. And in terms of nafsun mutma'inna, I can definitely vouch for the fact that our conversations, he was definitely nafsun mutma'inna. We rejoiced together in the win-win that if Allah did allow him to stay longer, that it would most probably be with ibtila, that he wouldn't go back to what he was before. And if he didn't stay, that he'd be returning to Rabbana subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I want to give comfort to his friends, his family, colleagues, that certainly from my point of view, he was that nafsun mutma'inna. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen for his life and for knowing him. Nahmadullah wa nashkur. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan, Dr. Zaza Al-Sheikh, for such a wonderful, uplifting message for all of us. I'd next like to invite Sheikh and Dr. Hisham Halia, a scholar of politics, international relations and Islamic studies. He's a senior associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute in London and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. And he also is a professorial fellow at Cambridge Muslim College and has studied with traditional Islamic scholars across many continents, receiving ijazas from a number of فليتفضل مشكورا. جزاكم الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Many of you will have known Sayyid Nabeel for much longer than I, and I hear many recollections of his glorious accomplishments, his noble ambition, his achievements in the professional world, which are truly amazing. I know those achievements far less. I had the privilege and the honor to meet him only a year or so before he passed away. And he touched my heart in a very different way and for very different reasons. I met him when he was giving a presentation in a place where I was with Naz Shah and others in this room. And in his presentation, which he discussed with me beforehand, there were some things I felt some discomfort in accepting. And he asked me, so I told him my honest opinion privately. And I was very surprised, but later learned this is one of his qualities, that he then gave me not only the floor to speak after his presentation, but insisted that I give a critique of what he had to say. There aren't many people I know in this world who would do that. There aren't many people who are good at taking critique, let alone inviting it. And Allah knows best as to what established that connection between us, especially in such a short amount of time. When he learned of his sickness, I was abroad. In fact, I just came. Those are my cases in the corner. And he asked that when I was next in London, if I might see him. So I arranged to see him when I visited sometime later. As a teacher, there are few honors that you can have bestowed upon you than a student asking you for advice or lessons. And he said there were some things he wanted to discuss with me privately and ask for my counsel. So I was honored and I went to see him, but I say to all of you here today, that as much as Nabeel Al Azami asked me to come and give him counsel and teach him something, I was the one who learned that day far more than he ever learned from me. It was the first time I'd seen him since he became sick, and it was a real privilege and an honor to be able to behold him at that time, because I saw the raw beauty of the strength of his spirit, the sakina and the peace of his soul. And at the same time, he showed such care. He showed such care about his community. He was so concerned about the rifts and the divisions that exist among us, and was so insistent to me of the need to heal the divisions and the rifts that occur among us. More than what he said about his community, he spoke about his family. And he said so much about his family to me that day, and so much care did he exhibit in every word that he said. That was his concern. That was his concern. I'm so grateful that I knew him. There are 2 times in my life when I know that I saw, and I have no doubt, the signs of wilayah, of friendship, of sainthood with God on a human being faced with their own mortality. And I bear witness that Nabeel Al Azami was one of those people. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. For his family and friends, I know you miss him. And I miss him too, although my loss is far less than yours. My prayer for you is that you are given the blessing of drawing upon that elixir of which he drank, the fountain of mercy which he swam within, and that you and we are benefited by God through him. May God rest his soul and raise him to the highest ranks of the life to come. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khairan, Shaykh Hisham, for a beautiful reminder of my brother's really exceptional character, mashallah. I mean, I don't wish to sort of praise my own family, but I think our family has been blessed with parents who have really instilled in us the sort of character that is really the message of the Prophet ﷺ's own teachings. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that the Prophet was only sent as one perfecting excellent character. I want to mention that there are books on sale, and these it would be a true tribute to my brother's legacy if you sort of took these, read them, gave them perhaps as gifts to family members, to friends. I was told by the Claritas publishers that they're on special offer here, so I think they're being sold for £10 a piece, and if you buy 2 you get a third free. So please do try to do that, and they will have to wrap up quite soon, as will we. So I will re-emphasize the request to all the speakers to try and keep to 3 minutes. Inshallah. Next we have Brother Dilwar Hussain, who has so kindly hosted us at the East London Mosque. He's the director of the East London Mosque and a long-standing pillar of our community. And given the stature of this masjid, a pillar of the British Muslim community.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. My dear brothers and sisters, first of all, welcome everyone to the London Muslim Centre. I've been listening very carefully to everyone, and everyone's message actually touched my heart. And I was thinking that Nabeel, while he was alive, he inspired us. While he was sick, he inspired us. And after his death, he's still inspiring us. Alhamdulillah. That's the kind of character that Nabeel was. And I've known him from the age of 8 probably. Since late 1980s, when he used to come with his father, Mamun Bhai, in our YMO circle. We used to invite Mamun Bhai regularly, and Nabeel used to come, Nabeel, Nazil, even Usama, they used to come, and Lubaba and others. And I've noticed from that time, Nabeel was so disciplined, well-mannered young man. You know, at that time, a young child. He was always like perfect. And I've seen him grow in YMO, in the Young Muslim Organization UK. And when I was the secretary of YMO, Habib Bhai was the president. I think he was the president of our Manchester branch. And he used to produce one magazine, Muslim Eye. I remember that, and he shared his plan with us. And, you know, then when I was his leader once, but now afterwards he became my mentor, like my tutor. He invited me to some of his Murabbi courses, and alhamdulillah, I attended one of the residentials, executive leadership, and I was really inspired by the way Nabeel, that was the first time I actually saw him delivering a course. Before that, he used to come now and then. I didn't really realize the quality that he possessed. And he actually went through these 11 qualities of leadership in that particular course. At that time, he was planning to write the book. And then I invited him to run a number of training sessions for our staff in East London Mosque, how we could improve our customer service, our leadership qualities and all that, and he came and delivered. Alhamdulillah, I also had the opportunity of spending some time with him in Malaysia. He was there delivering a seminar, I think a course, Junaid and him, and they invited me to the inauguration program, and I had dinner with them. And then both of us, we went to have dinner in Mansoor's wife's house. Alhamdulillah, we went together, Mansoor's wife picked us up. So that was the time that his uncle, we spent time together. And he was always giving me suggestions how we can improve our, you know, institutions and all that. I've never heard him talk negatively about anyone. You know, even I asked him about one person. One brother wanted to hold something here, and he was from Manchester. And I wanted his reference from this person, saying, what do you think about this brother? But he was, although I understood that he was not recommending him, but he was so polite in the way that he was talking about him. You know, he has a disagreement with him, but he was so polite. And I had the opportunity to visit him several times, alhamdulillah, during his illness. And as somebody mentioned that when we go to meet somebody, we feel sad. But, you know, and I was in the same state of mind, that knowing what he's going through. But when I went there, I was completely transformed because of the way he interacted with us. He was at ease with himself, he was, you know, tranquil, he was not worried at all. You know, the only thing he was worried about is about his dad. He said, you know, said Dilawar Bhai and Habib Bhai, both of us said, I'm planning how to let my dad know. You know, that's the only thing he was worried about. Alhamdulillah. So I left actually inspired by him. You know, I went, people usually go to visit people who are sick to give them comfort, but the opposite happened with me. I came back feeling inspired from him. And so this is the kind of, I don't want to repeat anything what people have said already. Alhamdulillah, he was a treasure for all of us. He was a role model for all of the young people. And we have to keep his life, his alive, you know, and pass this on to our current generation. Inshallah, we'll try our best to promote this book, and we need to promote Nabeel's character and life so that our future generation can be inspired, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq and grant him Jannah and grant all of his family sabr, inshallah, to bear the loss of Nabeel. Just one other thing. I think many people mentioned that Nabeel touched people's heart. Even just if you met him just 1 hour. I was sitting next to Brother Babur Mirza. Babur Mirza is my neighbor, and he is also a head teacher of Islamia primary school. And I had a very quick chat with him, and Babur said, I didn't know him much. I only met him for 1 hour. Right? And Nabeel gave him a lift, and thus, you know, only met him for 1 year ago, he attended a course or a lecture, and that's how we met Nabeel. And he's still here for last 3 hours, and you can see that how Nabeel touched people's heart. And that's, I think, that he inherited from his granddad, definitely. And his granddad was somebody, whoever met him, they've never forgotten him, even for a short time. You see. That's it from me, and I wish all the best for the family. And I'm really, it's good to see the whole family took this very positively. I think this is what Nabeel wanted, and he didn't want anybody to be sad and grieving and upset. And alhamdulillah, you're living up to that, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
The next speaker is Dr. Muhammad Abdul Bari. He's a long-term personal mentor and guide to Nabeel, and I'm sure to many of us in this room. Dr. Bari is an educationalist and parenting consultant, generous with his time, and has dedicated many years to community development and mentoring. And he's one of our oldest family friends as well, so he has a particular bond with us.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Alhamdulillahi kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. Brothers and sisters, it's very difficult to say things about Nabeel. He was close to me, as Lubaba has mentioned. I knew him since his childhood, but before that, his father Mamun Bhai has been my friend since 1971, I think, and since we started Islamic work in this country in the 1980s, we have worked together. His mother was childhood friend of my wife, so I saw him like not only my nephew or brother in Islam, but in fact I saw him like my son. And because Mamun Bhai had to live abroad, he, as the elder sibling of the family, used to always consult me. And since that, I have known him growing in the sense, he was with YMO, he worked with us. And ever since I introduced him with John Adair, who was my friend, I saw him moving leaps and bounds in the Murabbi, in the leadership training, and he made most use of John Adair. I was really surprised, and I was really happy that he did that. Together, we did a few things. And we helped MCB in forming its institutional capacity building initiative. We initiated an informal group of young, talented Muslim activist leaders in this country, Usra. And I can see many of them are here, alhamdulillah, many of them are his students. So anyway, my journey with Nabeel was unique. He has had multiple qualities, as brothers and sisters have mentioned. He has had multiple commitments, which he did well in a very organized way. He has had multiple qualities that touched many people, including me. Definitely, he looked up to me as his mentor, but as Brother Hisham Hillier mentioned, I saw him as my teacher. I just want to mention one thing, as Sister Zaza has mentioned. It is voicing the ibtila. Ibtila means test. I think whether this is a test is for human being, it's a test. But I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created these human gardens with all the beautiful human flowers. And he is the owner of this garden. And a gardener will definitely choose or pick up a flower that he likes. because flowers will automatically die. We will all pass away. But how lucky he was, how blessed he was, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has picked up when he was at his prime. He was flowering. So we all believe that he is in Jannah. We all believe that his family, that he's produced, his father, mother produced a son like him. Brothers and sisters have seen him as a brother. So he was a brother, he was wonderful son, he is wonderful father as well. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul. And I just want to mention one to my young brothers and sisters that I work with Nabeel. I will mention two things which we had discussed and we definitely know. Muslims at the moment are known for Muslim mediocrity. We don't invest our time and energy to become excellent. That has become the nature of Muslims. But I have seen in Nabeel the issue of ihsan and itqan, doing the best and doing precisely the thing that is demanded from us. That is the essence of Islamic teaching. That's the essence of Muslims doing far better in the past. That will be the essence if people of our generation is going to be over. People of younger generation take lesson from Nabeel, that whatever they do, be they in politics, be they in media or whatever in their life, try to be excellent, try to be precise. Let's all reclaim all these qualities that Muslims had in the past. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him the highest place in Jannah and help his family and friends to cope and learn from his character. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How long is it? 6 minutes. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we have a short video, inshallah, and this will be a message from my brother, I believe. Inshallah.
Was the Prophet Ar-Rasul first? Was he Al-Amin first? What was he first? Was he Ar-Rasul or was he Al-Amin? He was Al-Amin first. Now Rasul and the Risala, we won't have another Rasul, but a Risala or a message preaching. Sometimes we try to preach to the world, but we haven't built our credibility in the world yet. So being Al-Amin and building your honesty and credibility in society, when you do that and then you stand on top of a mountain to make a message, people will want to listen to you. So are we getting the order right? It's worth reflecting on. Build your moral compass. And here's another thing which is important. Have public defensibility of all your internal affairs. Meaning, the way you run your organization or your countries, if you believe internally what you're discussing, you would be happy for the world to know. If you aren't happy, then maybe there's something wrong. Can you publicly defend everything you're doing internally? If you can, then perhaps you're doing something right. Being subservient to values, not letting values be subservient to you. Building social and spiritual capital by articulating shared values which combine universal and faith-based principles. This is the new language and currency of the future that has been articulated as well, and offering ethical leadership in a world where we have too few of those. So a few parting quotes for you. This is by Professor Tariq Rahman. He says, we need to be monks by night and knights by day, combining spirituality and activism and offering the world moral distinctiveness through our courage to stand up to the wrong and promoting the good. Don't die without having supported justice and dignity on earth. And some of us are trying to do that work. But as Martin Luther King says, it takes patience because the arc of the moral universe is long, the journey is long, but ultimately history does bend towards justice. So if we're patient, then we will, if we persevere, and we know from Surah Al-Asr we learn about patience, then God will eventually give us success.
Please do pick up a copy of my brother's book, inshallah, and of course the tribute book, which is being distributed free. Please take a copy for yourselves and your families, inshallah. So finally, I'd like to request Neil Jameson, a friend and mentor, of my brothers and founder and director emeritus of Citizens UK. A couple of minutes.
Assalamu alaikum. Nazreen, Mahmoud, the family, thank you so much for Nabeel. We have all benefited from knowing him. I benefited more than I can ever expect from the relationship, the teaching he did, being one of the chosen few to be able to visit in the time of his decline. When it wasn't a decline at all, it was an uprising of passion for the faith and passion for life and so on. Given the time I've got, however, I want to focus on the legacy. The legacy is very important for all of us. He leaves a fine legacy with family, and I really want to commend the way you are bringing your children up, Nazreen. My mother died when I was 7, and my father pretended it didn't happen. And my mother's side knew it happened, and they taught me, as my brother and I grew up, about who she was, what she was about. I don't think she was an angel, but they said she was an angel. But the way you've brought your children up to know what has happened, have been there at every time of the milestone, the terrible milestones of his decline. I commend for that. That is one legacy. However, there are other legacies which he talks about all the time, as far as leadership is concerned. The book is obviously a legacy, but it's no good if it just gathers dust. It's a legacy in what we have to do. You should know that 9 days ago, 7 million people acted as part of the climate strike across the world. In Tower Hamlets here, I was very proud to see the East London Mosque have a delegation where there were 5 climate strikes on that Friday, and one of them was led from here to the Whitechapel, when with politeness and with discipline, the mosque leaders and others stopped the traffic. For 2 minutes, the traffic was stopped. The people peeped their horns and so on. That's nothing to what the climate emergency is about, of course. But that was leadership. If the professors and others who talk about climate extension are right, the rise in the temperature will lead to 0.5 meter rise in the sea. That is going to threaten Bangladesh more than anything else. It could even threaten Poplar and Limehouse and people that border any water. We have to act on these issues because they will not go away, and the children who we love so much will be so affected by climate emergency. That is important to us. The spike in hate crime has never been worse, and we look to the MPs and God bless you now for what you're doing. It's not just Muslim women who suffer from hate crime, it's Muslim women and ordinary women and women particularly in Parliament who have that. We have to stop that happening. We have to love more, we have to act more, and we have to be together more. Which is why, on December the 7th, please put that date in your diary, we are holding another one of these events. This is with the consent of the family. The People's Palace has been booked instead. This will be bigger, it might be shorter, but it'll be as good and honouring of Nabeel, and it'll be more secular, inevitably. The People's Palace, December the 7th in the afternoon. You're all welcome. There will be tickets and so on, so we know who's coming in. And what we will be doing there is a series of things, which is to look at the legacy, how this will work out in practice, who is leading now, following the book, but also we will be launching the Nabeel Al Azami Foundation. The Nabeel Al Azami Foundation will invest in leadership, invest in his legacy, and make sure that it is not forgotten for us. So please be there December the 7th in the afternoon, partly for that launch and partly also to honour the vast number of people who haven't had a chance to speak tonight, but really have inherited his teaching. And I want to finish really with his teaching from the book that he wrote. You will know if you'd visited him that he wrote the epilogue right at the end of his life, effectively. And if you've read the epilogue, it's written with a passion which the rest of the book doesn't have. It's more cerebral, the rest of the book. But the epilogue, he knew his time was running out. And let me just read from it and finish, therefore, with his words. In the epilogue, he heads it, the crisis, the final frontier in leadership development. The final page is a passionate call for action. He teasingly, but with great urgency, writes, "Stepping up. So what are we waiting for? If we know what to do and can turn a crisis to our advantage, should we step back and let others make a mess of it? Should we bury ourselves in yet more studies because we argue we're not ready? Then he concludes with the ultimate challenge for every reader and those he has mentored and the many who have looked to him for advice and leadership. In the end, the world is left with three kinds of people, he says. Only one of them involves a choice to embrace leadership to make a difference in the world. There are those who make things happen. There are those who watch things happen. And those who wonder what has just happened. Who will you choose to be? So yes, the People's Palace is a very important historical building. It takes 700 people. It's in Queen Mary University, December the 7th in the afternoon, to honour Nabeel and his legacy and to launch the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. And thank you so much for all of you who come to attend this event. Thank you to all the people who volunteered, extended family and many friends to help organize and set this event up. Thank you all for your kind words, for staying for the entire event. Thank you especially to a number of speakers who unfortunately have not been able to be accommodated in today's presentations. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to really shower upon us His mercy in عند ذكر الصالحين تنزل الرحمة أو تتنزل الرحمة. The scholars say that when you mention the righteous, mercy descends upon you from the heavens. So with that thought, I say with the Prophet ﷺ concluding dua, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا. And if you would like some books, they're in the back. After Salah, the books will continue to be there. Salah is in a few minutes' time.
All right.